We left Annapolis a month ago and arrived here in the Philippines a week ago. During that time, we drove up the East Coast and then flew across to the West Coast and then drove down the West Coast visiting family and friends along the way. It was a great time. We even got to dodge some typhoons along the way. But this video will show you all those exciting things, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. After working for the Coast Guard for 35 years, both on active duty and as a civilian, I finally truly retired. It was bittersweet, as I've worked all me bloomin' life with the Coast Guard. Little did I know, when I entered the Coast Guard Academy at the age of 18, the running light, which we were required to memorize, had the answer to the question of, how long have you been in the Coast Guard? Well, the answer we had to memorize and repeat back on command was, all me bloomin' life. My eyes is stars, my teeth is spars, and my hair is hempen seaweed. My father was King Neptune, and my mother was a mermaid. I was rocked in the cradle of the deep. When I spit tar. I is, I am, I are. It was also hard saying goodbye to our friends in Annapolis. We spent nearly every night after returning from Australia visiting friends, and on the last night in Annapolis, our Wilma family threw us a going-away party that we will never forget, including some karaoke. We woke up the next morning and headed out to see more friends and family, but on our way, we stopped by Passport Health for one last immunization. Since we had some time, we also decided to use up all the gift cards we had collected over the years, including the $2.75 remaining on the IHOP gift card. We also did some shopping for books, now that we were both retired and had lots of time on our hands. Maybe I should have read this one before I retired. After spending the night in DC with friends, we were on the road one last time in the mighty Prius, headed to New England to see family, and to do some final organization and packing to get everything we needed into 2 check bags and 2 carry-ons each, without going over the airline weight limit. Not an easy task. Thank goodness for Molly's mad packing skills. What better way for Molly to spend her birthday? On our last day in New England, we said goodbye to the mighty Prius and sold it to our niece for $1. After owning and driving the car for 13 years, it was hard to let it go. Part of the price for purchasing the Prius was a drive to the airport bright and early the next morning. All our gear, even with wheels on 4 of our pieces of luggage, it was not easy to maneuver it around the airport. However, being early helps, and it was not long before we were on the first plane headed to the West Coast. After a 6-hour delay at Chicago O'Hare Airport, we finally arrived in Portland, Oregon, and picked up our rental car. It wasn't the same as the Prius, but it was a good car for what we needed. We started our West Coast tour, driving from Portland out to Seaside on the Oregon coast, where we used to live while I was flying at Air Station Astoria. We still have good friends that live there. We had a great time reconnecting with them and seeing all the changes since we moved away. Due to tsunami dangers, the school our girls attended had been sold as a single-family home and is now surrounded by a chain-link fence. When you think about it, living in an old school seems a bit odd. All the local schools were moved to a combined site on higher ground. If I had gone to the school at the new site, I would not have gotten any work done because I would have spent my days enjoying the view. All too soon, we were back on the road, driving down the Oregon coast from Seaside to Brookings, Oregon, to visit my aunt and uncle. A 6.5-hour drive, but what a drive it was. These pictures don't do it justice. If you have the chance to drive the Oregon coast, I highly recommend it. Granted, my aunt and uncle lived right on the coast and had a phenomenal view. We spent our first morning hiking down the stairs to the beach and walking along the beach during an exceptionally low tide. The tide was so low, even Apple Maps thought we were in the ocean. The tide pools were amazing, filled with starfish, sea urchins, crabs, and mussels. The mussels were huge. They were the size of my entire hand. If we were not buying a boat and sailing around the world, this would be a beautiful place to live. Later that day, we went for a hike and picnic in Jedediah Smith Redwood State Park, which is actually in California, not Oregon. Having grown up in Northern California, I have always loved the redwoods. They are amazing trees that live close to the coast, from very southern Oregon coast to the central California coast. This is a very narrow 470-mile strip and don't grow more than 50 miles inland. The redwoods rely on the relatively stable temperatures and moisture that comes from the fog created by the Pacific Ocean in this region. And yes, I am officially a tree hugger. Next morning, we are on the road again, leaving Oregon, driving from Brookings, Oregon to Sonoma, California to see my aunt and cousin. This was another 6.5-hour drive. We started in the redwoods and ended up in the wine country of California. The transformation in scenery was quite dramatic. This also is a drive I highly recommend, especially along the coast through the redwood forest. Since we were pressed for time, we didn't stop along the way to do any of the mini hikes or tourist attractions like driving through a redwood tree. When we arrived in Sonoma, not only had the scenery changed, but so had the temperature. No longer were we wearing long pants and hoodies. We were now in shorts and t-shirts. We had a great time visiting with my aunt and cousin and thoroughly enjoyed my aunt's beautiful garden, which she has nurtured over many years into a drought and deer-resistant oasis. The next morning, we were on the road again, but needed to fill up the tank after all of our driving. It's $6.35 a gallon. Welcome to California. Since we were in the neighborhood, we headed to my childhood home in Martinez, which we sold a few years ago after my mom died. It was great to see the new owners were taking good care of the house. We then took a side quest to Briones Regional Park to hike up to where we spread my mother's ashes. Briones is a beautiful park with rolling hills. It is near where I lived as a boy and was where I would run to during cross-country practice in high school. It is also where my mom used to ride her horse. Needless to say, it is a sentimental place for me. We hiked to where my mom's ashes were spread. I read a poem written by my cousin to commemorate the event. It was very touching and a side quest well worth taking. We hit the road for another 6.5 hours to my brother's house in Hermosa Beach, California. Not sure why every drive on the West Coast is 6.5 hours. The first part of the drive is easy, but once we got over the grapevine, we found ourselves in the notorious LA traffic on the 405. After sitting in LA traffic for an hour and a half, we made it to Hermosa Beach. By the way, this is not a drive I would recommend, but let's face it, the beach is worth the drive. We spent over a week at my brother's house, where we took frequent walks to the beach and bakery. We also enjoyed the Hermosa Beach Summer Festival, where I found the massage chair, which I highly recommend if you have a cool 20 grand burning a hole in your pocket. We went for a hike on Palos Verdes, where we saw Point Vincent Lighthouse, and then hiked to Terranea Resort, where we were able to wander the grounds of the resort and have brunch. While eating, we saw a demo by a falconer who showed us a peregrine falcon and an owl. This is how they keep the seagulls away and remove rodents and rabbits from the resort. We even got to pet the owl. Very cool and soft. The day before we returned our rental car, we drove to San Diego to visit our crew coach from the Coast Guard Academy. He works on the USS Midway and gave us a 3-hour behind-the-scenes tour of the aircraft carrier. Many of the displays are interactive, and there are lots of volunteers stationed around the ship to provide amazing information. If you find yourself in San Diego, I highly recommend a tour of the USS Midway. I even got to pretend to be the boss, air boss that is, and sit in the admiral's chair. At least I got to pretend for a bit. Let's face it, Molly's the one really in charge. All too soon, it was time to catch our flight to the Philippines. We've been hoarding frequent flyer miles and award points on our credit cards for the past 4 years, so we could fly to the Philippines in business class. If you have the means, I highly recommend flying business class, especially on long-haul flights, where they have lay-flat seats. The lounges which come with the tickets are another great perk. They have an open bar and all-you-can-eat buffet. After arriving in Japan following our 12-hour flight from LA, we had to navigate the Tokyo train system. Thankfully, there were several very friendly official folks that helped us buy the correct tickets and told us what trains to use. By the way, cash is king for Tokyo trains and metro system. Luckily, there was an ATM right there next to the ticket bank. It wasn't long before we arrived in Shibuya, Tokyo suburb, and found our hotel, the Grand Bell Hotel. Note to self, make sure you check you are not staying in a smoking room. I accidentally booked a smoking room, and it was unbearable. Luckily, they allowed us to swap to a non-smoking room. By the time we got settled in our room and we were so tired, we went to sleep around 4 p.m. Tokyo time. Did I mention the typhoon? I remember the pilot telling us as we were descending into Tokyo, it might be a bit rough during the descent due to the approaching tropical depression. Well, that strengthened into a full typhoon by the time we woke up the next morning.
So it turns out Molly and I got here just before a typhoon hit Tokyo. And it is raining.
Molly and I were not going to let a little wind and rain ruin the few days we had in Tokyo. After living in Astoria, Oregon for 4 years, we learned that there was no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear. Unfortunately, we had left our full foul weather gear in our bags that we had stored at the airport and only had light rain jackets. Molly had booked a ramen cooking class the first day, and we were happy when they told us that the class was still on despite the typhoon. After trudging through the rain, we found the Baba Ramen classroom, which doubled as an Italian restaurant in the evenings. Andrew Baba, the head chef, was our instructor who attempted to impart years of knowledge into a 4-hour class. It was amazing not only to learn about the 4 parts of ramen and how to make each part, but also he taught us how to cook gyoza, which are dumplings.
Nice quick flip. There you go. Nice. There you go.
We each made our own noodles and mixed our base broth. I had the onerous task of breaking down the pork skull and bones in the broth with a wooden mallet. I had to grind the bones every 15 minutes for 2 minutes. Then it was up to Molly and friend of the chef and 2 instructors to put the ramen all together.
A bit more full. We want it absolutely full, okay? Good, yes, very good. Beauty. We're pouring that through our sieve into our bowl there.
Up to you, buddy.
Good. And then you can put the sieve and the ladle back over here.
Stuff in it.
Go ahead and put it back there. Good. And then I'm just going to quality control this. And then we'll be good to hand it on as well. Oh, that is good today. Oh. No, it's really good. It's really good. You guys did good today.
All right. Not only did we get the chef's stamp of approval, but that was really tasty ramen. After the ramen cooking class, not only were we stuffed, but the rain had subsided a bit, so we were able to venture out and walk around the city. During our walk, we stumbled across an all-you-can-drink sake bar. You could pay for a half hour or a full hour to drink. Sample sake. They had 7 different types of cold sake, including sweet, fruity, full body, dry and light, cloudy, craft, and liqueur. They also had many different room temperature sake. We opted for the half hour and sampled all the cold sake and 1 room temperature sake, at which time we determined sake is not our drink of choice. We then walked to and explored the Emperor Meiji Shrine. It is on 170 acres and boasts 100,000 trees. It also has a path lined with sake barrels on one side and wine barrels on the other. In the inner courtyard of the shrine, we found the Myoto Kusu trees, which symbolize love and marital harmony. It was amazing how many more people were out and about in the afternoon, especially once the rain was no longer downpouring. We were able to observe the Shibuya crossing. This is one of the busiest crosswalks in Tokyo, where all the traffic stops and everyone gets to cross from all directions at once. The best vantage point just happens to be a Starbucks. Well, Molly didn't mind at all, especially since she got a free sample. Sorry, I can't stand coffee. The next day, the rain was gone, and we headed out for one last day in Tokyo. It was amazing how many shrines are all around the city. Some are quite large, while others are tucked away into tight spaces. On our second day in Tokyo, Molly had booked a traditional tea ceremony. This included dressing in the traditional kimonos. There were several women that dressed each of us and made sure that we put it on correctly. Kimonos were very impressive and quite comfortable. During the tea ceremony, our host told us the history behind the tea ceremony and all the traditions and customs of the ceremony. In the bowl was the matcha tea that we were going to mix, and to the right are 2 sweet treats. The triangular one was jelly and a pastry dough. It was very tasty. After the tea ceremony, Molly and I continued our self-guided walking tour of Tokyo. We walked to the Imperial Palace Gardens, which are free to visit. I would recommend using a side entrance instead of the main one because they inspect everyone's bags and lines can get long at the main entrance. The gardens are on what was part of the Edo Castle, which is impressive unto itself. After visiting the Imperial Gardens, we found a lesser-known attraction, the Ginza Art Aquarium. This is an aquarium filled with different types of goldfish and arranged in artistic displays. I was amazed by all the different types of goldfish there are. This aquarium is not free, but does not cost much to get in. After walking 27,000 steps, that's over 12 miles, it was time to head back to the airport to catch our flight to Cebu, Philippines. One thing that impressed me about Japan is how well organized everything is. There are even lines painted on the train station platforms designating where you stand if you're waiting for the first train or the second train to arrive at the station. After arriving at the airport and checking in, we headed for the lounge since our flight didn't leave until 2 a.m. But I mentioned the lounges are a great perk with business class tickets. Eventually, we were on the airplane headed for Cebu. Thank goodness for lay-flat seats. Though I don't think I slept at all on the flight since I was so excited about getting to the Philippines. We arrived in Manila, Philippines at 5:30 a.m. local time, and our flight to Cebu was not until 3 p.m. When we asked if we could get on an earlier flight, they said we could get on a 10 a.m. flight for 1,000 pesos each. After doing some quick math, we realized it was about $32, and we said, yes please. We also had to pay for additional baggage, but that was about $25. You have to love budget airlines, since they charge you for everything. We eventually boarded our flight using a bus. By the way, boarding in Group 1 when you're using buses is not advantageous because you get on the bus first, which means you get off the bus last. We finally arrived in Cebu and got a car using the local equivalent of Uber, which is called Grab. We didn't have far to go to get to our Airbnb, but traffic in and around Cebu is something else, and driving is not for the faint of heart. I will cover that more in detail in another video. Eventually, we made it to our new home. It has a balcony with a great view of the water. We're actually staying in a resort. More on that in our next video also. For now, cheers from Cebu.